Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat tene brahma hridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya tejo varimridam yatha vinimayo yatratra sargo mrisha dhamna swena sada nirastakohakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation, made of threefold gunas, appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amrutadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahmarshi. Go on drinking the sweet nectar day after day. So today we are entering the 26th or the last chapter of 5th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We have come to the end of the 5th Skandha. So 5th Skandha, as we saw, is about order. If we remember, in the 2nd Skandha, it was given that the remaining 10 Skandhas, each of them cover a topic. So the order was, the 3rd Skandha was Sarga, 4th was Visarga, which means creation and sub-creation. So in the 3rd Skandha, we saw the creation of the cosmic being first manifesting as the cosmic form Virat Rupa, and from him coming forth Brahma. And then in the 4th Skandha, all the secondary creation made by Brahma. And through that, we also saw the stories of various great devotees and teachings. These are the 3rd and 4th. The 5th Skandha is with the topic of order. It's called Sthana or Sthiti. That means the order within creation. So, having described creation and subcreation, this Skandha is all about the immense order in the universe. In fact, one way to define Ishvara or God is the order of the universe, because he is present in every cell, every atom, as the very intelligence which makes it for an orderly, harmonious universe from the micro to the macro level. So, this is why we saw the detailed description of Earth and its various dvipas or islands, the various divisions of Earth, the movement of sun, the movement of moon, and the various stars, the 27 stars, the planets, and the what is called the 14 worlds, the 7 terrestrial and above, and the 7 below terrestrial or subterranean regions. So all of this, as we can see, functions with remarkable harmony. There is a remarkable intelligence, order, and harmony with which the earth is going through its 12 months and its 6 seasons, and the sun is moving about in the northern and southern direction. The moon does its bright and dark half of the month, and these 27 stars with their 4 quarters and therefore 108 total movements of the stars and the planets, all of this represent the harmony, which is the essential topic of this skandha, or this canto, 5th canto. Sthana or sthiti is the order, and that order and that harmony has been described in detail, while also through that bringing out the lineage of Priyavrata, and thereby the great stories of Rishabha and Jadabharata, who are two great wonderful examples. Rishabha being an avatar himself, who is an example of renunciation, and Jadabharata being a great example of supreme vairagya, detachment, that he developed after learning the lesson of getting attached to a deer. by mistake and thereby having to go through another lifetime, and then being fully abiding in jnana, in total realization and surrender. So we saw the stories of Rishabha and Jadabharata, and also a great description of the order of the universe, which is sthana or sthiti. So this topic concludes with this chapter, where Shuka Brahmarshi concludes by describing the various kinds of hellish or infernal regions which await people who engage in activities which are completely forbidden. So, again, just as heaven, we saw the various regions are all temporary ultimately, the hellish regions are also temporary. So, the main significant point of Bhagavatam or of Vedic wisdom is that any place in time and space is temporary, however beautiful or however repulsive it might be. And the earth being in between is considered the balance of the two. So, this is the place where one can see both pleasure and repulsive activities at the same time. The so called heavens are full of pleasurable activities, and so called hells are full of repulsive activities and situations. And all of these are only for the jiva to go through his journey to recognize the false identification which has resulted in going through these regions of time and space, whether it be heaven or hell or earth, and thereby being free of time and space, being free of heaven and hell, and realizing the eternal oneness which is beyond all time and beyond all space, which is the Supreme Being, God, Bhagavan. So, that understanding being clear, the hellish regions are described by Shuka Brahmarshi as places one experiences or experiences one goes through when one commits various activities that are forbidden. Just as heavenly regions are given as reward for virtuous activities, hellish regions are given as punishment for forbidden activities, and these can be seen as physical places or also as states of consciousness right here, where one dwells in tremendous depression or tremendous suffering, which are all hellish ways of living because of one's own bondage due to actions. So, with this, Shuka Brahmarishi describes in great detail. In fact, he says there are 28 enumerated places called hellish regions. There are many more, but 28 are named, and they have many names. They are all described in detail here. The names are Tamishra, Andha Tamishra, Raurava, Maharaurava, and so on. 28 names are there. All the 28 names are given, and the different activities that lead to different hellish regions are also given, and what kind of experience one goes through. So, the essential point of all this is to be aware that every activity has its own reaction as long as one is identified with doership. That is the whole principle of karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect that is true as long as one is identified with the sense of doer, and that is very false. But as long as the false sense of doership is there, whatever activities one engages in, one reaps the results of it, either positive or negative. The way to get out of this bondage of karma is karma yoga, where one recognizes that all the fruits of the activities are for the Supreme Being, and the very doer of the activities is also the same Supreme Being, the energy of the Supreme Being, Prakriti. Therefore, neither the doer nor the enjoyer is any individual, but it's simply the energy, the material energy of the Supreme Being that both does and reaps results. When this recognition is there, and therefore there is non identification with both doership and experiencing, then the cause and effect of karma goes away, activities go on, there is cause and effect at the realm of activities, but there is no doer, and therefore there is no individual who reaps the cause and effect. But as long as the false sense of doership is there, the false individual is also there, and therefore he reaps the results of good and bad actions. If he does good actions, he gets more positive experiences, heavenly experiences, so to speak. And if he does negative activities, he gets hellish experiences, so to speak. So the various negative activities are listed here, not exhaustive, but they are very indicative of the kinds of things one ought to be very wary of ever involving in. These are things such as taking away another's wealth or another's wife, coveting essentially anyone else's whatever belongs to them. This is very clearly seen, unfortunately, done by many today. People covet others' wealth or others' property or others' women and so on, or men for that matter. So, all of this is essentially forbidden because it, again, these are all activities that deepen the sense of individual. It is in the mode of tamas, and because being in the mode of tamas, it is very dark, and therefore the sense of doership only becomes stronger. The sense of individuality becomes stronger when one is so caught in the ego and wants to covet what belongs to someone else. And then Shuka Brahmarshi goes on to say that if one, for instance, also cheats, essentially commits adultery of any kind, or if one goes on to be so attached to his family that he is willing to commit violence against other people or other beings in order to take care of his family in a very selfish way, or if one is having so much hatred for others and only interested in nourishing his own body, or if one is very cruelly treating animals and birds and killing them mercilessly. And this is again, we are seeing this happen. It's one thing to eat meat, which has been done for by many cultures for a long time, but when there are slaughterhouses which are operating like mechanized places for killing animals and birds in cruel ways by millions and millions. So that's another activity that is explicitly mentioned here. And then there are many such activities mentioned, such as here we see that one who disrespects the Vedas or disrespects his parents, it's another such forbidden activity, or one who embraces heretic creeds, or one who inflicts punishment on undeserving innocent people. This is especially applicable to people who are working in the realm of law, whether it be judges or people who are able to make such rulings. If they ever punish an innocent person, that's why the law always says that it's okay to let a criminal escape compared to punishing an innocent person, and that's mentioned here as well. Or one who does not respect others, the elders, and people who deserve respect, and who kills various beings without any reason. It's one thing to kill for purposes of defense, but if there is no reason and yet people kill for sport, then that is forbidden. Or if one doesn't share anything, that's another thing. If one eats food or has property and he does not share it, he hoards it selfishly all for himself. Anyway, it is very unintelligent because one can only eat 2 or 3 times a day, one can only sleep in 6 foot of space. And so to simply hoard more and more wealth that one individual can never actually enjoy in any way, instead of sharing it in a meaningful way, because anyway it will be taken away after death and shared by others, whether his family or the government or whatever. So to have this hoarding mentality and not share anything is mentioned here, and forcibly taking away wealth from others, stealing wealth from others, and engaging in unnatural sexual activities, and all kinds of other activities, such as hunting for beyond what is prescribed, and making people do very impure activities, or forcing people to do impure things, and oneself also engaging in impure activities, and bearing false testimony in a lawsuit in order to cheat someone, and drinking wine during the time of a sacred vow, and many other activities like this, doing human sacrifices, which are mentioned here, which has been done by many civilizations and which are forbidden. So all of these various activities are all mentioned as an example of the kinds of things one ought to never consider doing. Unfortunately, while some of them are not done, such as human sacrifices, maybe in only some extreme situations in some tribal cultures it's still practiced, but predominantly some things are not there. But certain things, such as mass slaughter of animals, and bearing false testimony, and coveting others' property, are all unfortunately very prevalent even now, and they are all explicitly forbidden by Bhagavatam as things that will result in this jiva going to hellish regions. And these hellish regions are in fact described in great detail. As we said, the names are given. Every hellish region has its own name, and the kinds of experience one goes through in these hellish regions. One is given a specific type of body through which one has to go through the suffering. And this can again be seen symbolically as, right here, a state of consciousness where one is born with a very pitiable state of consciousness, and also the physical body to go with it, and going through an immense suffering. So all of this is described in great detail in terms of the various types of hellish experiences one goes through. And then Shuka Brahmarshi concludes by saying that these are only a sample, that's 28. There are hundreds and thousands of such infernal experiences given by Yama. Yama is the ordainer of all these judgments, and he is the one who decides upon death. This is the symbolic representation of this energy, Yama, who decides upon the death of a body, what kind of experience this soul is going to go through. And therefore, he said here that this 28 is only a sample. There are hundreds and thousands of such infernal regions which people enter. And then he concludes by saying that those who follow the path of virtue enter heavenly regions. Those who follow the path of sin enter these infernal regions. And those who have a mix of the two come to earth, which is to say, come to a regular human life with its ups and downs, and given another opportunity to escape from this completely, which is to say, not go back to a heavenly region, or not go back to a hellish region, or not again come back to a human life, but recognize that the essential reason for bondage, whether through virtue or through sin, or a mixture of both, is through the sense of doership. And therefore, by being free of doership, and thereby by being free of bondage of actions, one can live freely here and now, and thereby be free of these cause and effect relationships of doership. So, having described all this, Shuka Brahmarshi concludes by saying But thereby, I have described to you the 14 spheres. As we saw, there are 7 spheres starting with earth going above. They are Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha, Maha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. They come in the Gayatri Mantra too as the 7 regions. And these 7 regions also, it is said, corresponds to the 7 chakras starting from the Muladhara chakra. So it is again, in one sense can be seen as region in time and space, and also it can be seen as state of consciousness, because Muladhara chakra, which is the base chakra, can be seen as the state of consciousness of a basic human being rooted in the reproductive organ, which is the base. And then when the energy rises up to Bhuvaha, which is Swadhisthana, then Suvaha, which is Manipuraka, and then so on. It goes through the Anahata, Vishuddhi, Agya, and Sahasrara. The 7 chakras can be considered as the 7 heavenly regions or spheres. And similarly, the 7 hellish regions, the 7 subterranean regions we saw, are the regions corresponding to the lower levels of consciousness below human. And then he says, by concluding, that all these 14 are all essentially the gross form of Bhagavan Narayana himself. So that is the essential wisdom that one has to always never lose sight of, is that there is only one manifest being, which is the supreme being manifest as the cosmic Virat Rupa. And if one sees this, then there is no bewilderment. All of heaven, all of hell, all of earth, all of time, all of space, all experiences, when all of this are seen as simply the play of one cosmic being, then there is nobody here. Instantly one is free of the sense of I and mine, and thereby one is free of reactions, one is free of any kind of cycle of pleasure and pain, and one is free. So that's the essential wisdom that again Shuka Brahmarshi always brings us back to, that all these regions are there. 14 regions he described in great detail. So Bhagavatam, as we see in the Rishis, they have done a very thorough description, enumerating in great detail the various aspects of the material nature, dividing it into different regions, different states of consciousness, activities that lead to different regions, the infernal regions, which are 28 in number, and the various kinds of forbidden activities that are meant to lead one to such regions. Having described all this, only to drive home the essential ground point, fundamental point, that all of this is there because it is the nature. So if we study nature, we see this infinite diversity. There are so many elements, so many places, so many species, and therefore so many regions, so many states of consciousness. Everything is there and everything has been studied in detail and described. And yet, the highest teaching is that all of this are part of the one supreme being, and therefore one can go through the slow ascending process of going from one state of consciousness to another, going from one chakra to another, and going from one sphere of heaven to another, and all the rest. And there are all various sadhanas and yogic processes that are given for all this. And yet one is caught in the sense of I through all these other sadhanas. But when one completely surrenders fully the sense of I and mine, and recognizes that all there is only the Supreme Being Vasudeva, the Supreme One Truth, then instantly there is no process of ascending, there is no gradual movement there. Instantly one is freed of the sense of doership, and all of this is instantly transcended when the very notion of I who was attempting to transcend is seen as illusory. So this is the essence of Bhagavatam, and that is what Shuka Brahmarshi concludes the Skandha with, and he says, therefore, one who with full of reverence, that is Shraddha, reads, hears, and recites the account of this whole topic, that is the order of the universe. We saw the sthana or sthiti, the order of the entire universe described in great detail in all these previous episodes, chapters, and understanding that this entire diversity of the universe with its tremendous order and intelligence is all the gross form of the Supreme Being Vasudeva. By recognizing this, he says, and by listening in this way with reverence, one can realize the incomprehensible Supreme Spirit, which is the theme of all the Upanishads, he says. And therefore his mind will be purified with devotion. So that's the essence of this whole skandha. In fact, he says, Yattad Bhagavato Narayanasya Sakshat Mahapurushasya Stavishtam Rupam Atma Maya Gunamayam Anuvarnitamadritaha Patati Shrunoti Shravayati Sa Upageyam Bhagavatah Paramatmano Grahyamapi Shraddha Bhakti Vishuddha Buddhir Veda. It's a long sentence which says exactly what the translation we just saw, which is one who reads with Shraddha, reverence, bhakti, his mind is purified and he realizes the essence of the entire Upanishads when he listens or reads to this content, which is that everything is the form of the Supreme Being Narayana. So, with this skandha, this chapter and this skandha, this canto concludes, and therefore he says, having heard the gross as well as the subtle aspect of the Lord, one ought to therefore fix the mind on the Supreme Being and thereby be free. And so he says finally, in this way, O Parikshit, I have described to you the earth with its divisions, dvipas, subdivisions, varshas, rivers, mountains, aerial region, heavenly spheres, subterranean regions, quarters, all of this. Know everything to be the body of the Almighty Supreme Being who is the abode of everything. And with this, he ends the skandha, and we finish the skandha with this, and we will enter the sixth skandha tomorrow. And the topic of sixth skandha is very beautifully grace. So the very topic of the sixth skandha, the entire content will be focused on grace. So we saw creation in the third, sub-creation or secondary creation in the fourth, and the order of the universe in the fifth, and we will enter sixth, which is about grace, with the next episode. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.